Okay, go.
Okay, so, so, 1975, mid 1975, Chico's Party World was closed because of what I will call the JJ incident. So, I finally figured out my own version of the Shadows and JJ. So, a year later, in 1976, they decided that Henry and a couple engineers would plan to build to rebuild another JJ-like animatronic, but this time call him Balloon Boy instead, so he can be part of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So during the same time, William had told Henry about news about him building Circus Baby's Pizza World, but Henry said to William that he was never going to be involved in any of it. He simply wanted to have William to try to build Circus Baby's Pizza World on his own. And that he actually did. And so, during around this time, another new animatronic was introduced called Balloon Boy. And, of course, he was very popular and, of course, by two restaurants successful on their hands. It was time for something to be set up. And the Shadows and JJ had a plan. At night, I believe that their plan was to find out and seek into the restaurant to see what else was going on. But while they were there, the Shadows find a memory of them, a memory of what they were before they were known as Shadows. A character known as Nightmare, who later, surprisingly enough, in FNAF 4 would be called Nightmare. So, Nightmare told him of Wolverine to make sure to be very careful of displaying who they are. So, he disappeared and never been seen again. And so, you know, and so during, and so we continue on with the timeline. And of course, in the early 70s, the Cry Child was born, but in 1980, Elizabeth Afton was born. But Elizabeth Afton is actually our next thing to deal with. Well, our next thing to deal with is the Crying Child, because this is where we start to have FNAF 4 take place, where it always takes place in 1983. And this is where we finally have gone to the mini games, starting with FNAF 4. Now you might be wondering, Matt the Comic Guy, why are you saying now you're getting into the mini games? How do you already have enough information before the mini games started? Yes, but some of those were just theories of what was going on. And so, during the FNAF 4 mini games, you play as Evan Afton, aka the crying child, also known as the youngest son of William Afton. But for some reason, or I would say a lot of people, this is where Michael Afton, his older brother, starts trying to scare him with a foxy mask. Yeah, constantly trying to scare his youngest brother with a foxy mask. I know this sets up the FNAF 4 nightmares, but hear me out. In this timeline, Michael Afton is now in high school years now. And he's starting to not realize he's scaring his youngest brother by wearing a foxy mask. This happens in 5 days. And that means Michael Afton takes his friends and has a prank gone too far. Which, honestly enough, creates an accidental event that he caused called the Bite of 83. Which we know what happens because of the crying child's tears. Had ended up being him being killed by Fredbear. And we know that happens next. Crying child dies. Yep. He's sent to rush in the hospital. His brother tells him they pull him back together in the Fredbear plush. Then, Crying Child Evan Afton is gone for the rest of the series. But not for having a few days coma, which then becomes nightmares. Suddenly, Nightbear becomes Nightmare by his final day, and after that, he's completely gone. After the nightmares happen, and after being crushed to death by Fredbear. So I would say that all of the nightmares of FNAF 4, the main gameplay happens right after Crying Child has a coma. And so Fredbear's Fire Diner is closed. We would need to expect the next thing that happens. William Afton and his wife has an argument about taking care of his son Michael. To me, this happens right after the FNAF 4 gameplay. Why did I think that? Well, considering I have no explanation of why I think it happens after the entirety of FNAF 4, but hear me out. After that, she leaves. Which so this led to events in 1983, where he has successfully built Circus Baby's Pizza World. But another tragedy happens to another Afton. See, in this location, Circus Baby's Pizza World is open and has Circus Baby as a star, Baloa, Funtime Freddy Bonbon, the main arenas, the Baby Babs, and Funtime Foxy. But a tragedy happens in this location one day when it was open, the very first day when it opened. Of course, Elizabeth Afton never listens to her father, and so she also gets killed as well. And she is the next death that happens in the series. Well, the next obvious death in the mini games. And so she gets to control the animatronic. And it's like that. Afterwards, Circus Bee's Pizza World is closed. So that happens right afterward. So what happens after that will surprise you. Since William Afton lost both his children, had divorced with his wife, and now seems to go into madness. Now he realizes what he must do to change his life. He goes to the first fast food pizza location and drives there and parks there. And we all know what happens. Sees Charlotte and boom, Charlie, Henry's daughter is gone, is dead. You see it in the FNAF 6 minigame. Anyway, we're wondering what happened next. Well, I figure out that William Afton, because of all the bad things that happens during his previous business, that's when he starts to snap, and he starts to kill people out for revenge of all the bad things that happened in his life. The abuse of his father, the loss of the two of his employees, a certain person was soon figured out to be dead, and to this part of the world, both his children lost, his wife being divorcing him, and that's how he gets revenge and becomes the killer we all know.
And his 2 kids.
Oh, and the loss of his 2 kids. Anyways, right after that, the puppet comes along, and that's how Kenton Rain sees the body of Charlie laying down, and that's how the puppet, Charlie, controls the puppet. And so, with all of this happening, wondering what happens next. Well, here's what it gets a bit confusing right after a while. See, I have explained enough events to help a lot of the series, but here's the thing. It is never explained what happens in the middle of the series in between William Afton starting to become a killer and him continue on in that past until the gameplay of FNAF 2. Not a single thing is explained in between. So, I'm gonna give you 2. Yeah, this is going to be harder than I thought. So, 2 years after, in 1985, he goes in the spring bodysuit and kills 5 other children. Those kittens are Susie, Gabriel, Jeremy, Fritz, and Cassidy. But during this time, the puppet comes around and stuffs them inside the suits, letting them control all those 5 animatronics to get revenge on William Afton. And this is where I explain it gets weird. It gets confusing and weird of what happens in between him, William Afton, coming murder and the animatronics having revenge in the series. None other than the gameplay of FNAF 2 in 1987. See, they just built a toy animatronics and FNAF, but I believe that right after they started to notice that the animatronics started to stink and smell like foul odor, And this is where I believe that him being controlled by a human, Foxy, caused him to malfunction, and that's how I believe that moment his code came out of order. So, during those times, the place, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, gets closed. So, now we have events that never explain the games, and new events that never been explored in the games at all. Now we come to the gameplay of FNAF 2 in 1987. So Jerry Fitzgerald listens to the phone guy's calls and survives again 6 nights. 6 nights. With one last night being a birthday party. With new animatronics called the Toy Animatronics, who has a very security system, around their lineup. Mangle, yes, is torn apart and put back together. That's why she's not a Mangle. And yes, I'm aware that, because he had replaced him with the original Foxy because he was too scary for certain people, and had to make it, for these new toy animatronics for younger children. Anyways, I don't know how I'm gonna explain this, but I already know enough on how the toy animatronics start trying to kill you. It's not because they're controlled by human beings, like the FNAF 1 and Circus Location animatronics. No, it's because they have a security system that can check anyone who seems suspicious in the FNAF 2 pizzeria. Yeah, this one is a grand reopening, and during the 6th night of Jeremy Fitzgerald's shift, actually has his frontal lobe bitten off, causing the bite of 87. And now, time you to get to the part. And now, what explain which was caused by Mangle. But now, time to get to the part. Now you're going to understand where it gets bit more confusing and weird. FNAF 1, the first game in the series. Or should I say, Sis Location. And this is why I assume after the FNAF 2 events, after the toy animatronics are scrapped, this is where the timeline after Sis Location FNAF 2 takes place starts to become normal at first, starts to become, fine at first, but then after a while it becomes a bit confusing and weird. See, there's 2 explanations of how things happen in these games. And one of those games is Sis Location. So after growing up to becoming a man in the year 1990 through 1991, we introduced to the Game Boy Sis Location. We're playing as Michael Afton after he'd been grown up from teenage years into a grown man. And as this character goes down the elevator to Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals, this, by the way, is under his William Afton's house. Yeah, got to mention it. Anyways, wait till a moment until I explain where after these events where it gets a little confusing and weird after not explaining what happens in between. So after this, Michael Afton survives against 5 nights, but the animatronics all become entered, scoop him and use him as this disguise. It happens to a series of mini games. They realize the disguise doesn't work anymore because Michael Afton becomes rotten. Skin becomes rotten, poops out Annard, and told by Circus Baby it's not gonna die. Yay! Don't worry, I get to where I think where realistic gets confusing. The weird part is the moment he's still alive somehow without any explanation. And now, this is where I get to the point where it gets confusing and weird. The first explanation is how Michael Afton is still alive after being scooped and used as a disguise as Ennard. See, that's another thing. No one ever explains why Michael Afton is still alive but doesn't get killed off until he gets burned alive. Huh? What? How is that possible? I mean, no one has any idea or any actual explanation of how Michael Afton, after being scooped and being disguised from Ennard, is still alive after the events of the gameplay of Sister Location. So, how is Michael Afton still alive? And this is where I get to my. And this is my first warning: is that if you're a fan of the series, it gets confusing and weird. No explanation of how Michael Afton was still alive after the events of Sister Location, up to the events of Pizzeria Simulator. You know.
Okay, hold on.